So what you're saying is that Nick may be wearing a Speedo on the beach with his scuba gear might be a good ad for him to do on Facebook. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not if it makes people accelerate their scroll and go further down the page, you know. You want something that's going to make them stop, not speed up.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Croaky Harvey with bronchitis throat, and this is my buddy Douglas Pratt, who's in a hurricane.
Yes. Yeah, well, you say that, but it does make your voice sound sexy with that accent. So
it sounds like I'm a 30-year smoker.
Yeah, I'm doing all right over here. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm in Mississippi right now. I've heard a lot of those.
Yeah, right. Cool. Well, our guest this week is Franklin Horton, who we'll get to in a minute. Great guy who we both were hanging out with at VoucherCon recently. But first of all, let's get to a question from a reader. This is from Beth in Florida. Which is best, write a longer series or write more than one in a shorter series?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. I guess it's going to depend on what you consider a longer series.
I think it's pretty heavily depends, doesn't it, on a lot of things.
Yeah, that's a big, and I say this a lot. I think your mileage may vary. I think there's people who write trilogies, and depending on your genre, like some of these supernatural fantasy trilogies and stuff are huge. They do a trilogy, then they go out and do another trilogy, and they've become pretty popular doing that. Then you have other people like our good friend Kyla Stone, who writes, I think she writes maybe 6 or 7 in a series, which is, I kind of consider that like a short series too at that point. But I'm at 11 and 12. You're at like what, 17, 15?
17's on pre-order, and 7 in the other series is on pre-order, and I plan to keep them going.
In my opinion, I think it just depends. I like the longer series because you do build a lot of interest in the character. And you can build a lot of, and people are always asking, what's Chase going to do next? What's Chase going to do next? From a financial standpoint, I think longer series has, if it's a successful longer series, let's I guess you add that as an addendum. My first series was 6 books long and never successful, and then I should have stopped after 3. But you don't get emotional about it and keep wanting to write it because I love this character, even though it doesn't sell. So I think that's something you got to think about. What do you think?
I think everything you said right there. I mean, it varies by genre, and there's no one-stop shop here. It's you got Kmart out there banging out standalones, and the key with that and what she does brilliantly is she does standalones, and they all are in the same genre. They all have the same vibe. She's known for the twists at the end. So the characters change, but what you're going to get from reading a Kmart book, that's Kirsten Modulin for those of you who aren't cool like us, because she's been on the show. Oh, and we just met her at VoucherCon too. We ran into her and gave her a hug. She's a lovely little thing. She's tiny.
Lovely little thing.
She is. She's like tiny.
She's kind of short, yes. But yeah. Well, you're also tall, so to you, everybody's short. So
That's true. From the land of the giants. So she's making it work that way. A lot of people, as you say, do 3 books and do the trilogy. I've got a long series going, and when I think I was at about 8 or 9 into it, and I decided to do a spin-off series and do a second series. And then it takes a while to grow that second series. I think one thing we've all learned, and I know it's happened for you, it happened for me, it's happened to Don Rich, who's just doing another series. When you launch that second series, you think it's going to start where your other series is at in terms of reach and sales. It's not the way it works, generally speaking. So you kind of have to build again. And it builds quicker because you're getting the word out there as you put one out. But what I did was then I alternated the series. So I went back and forth. I'd write a book in one series and then switch to the other one. So I was putting out 2 books a year in both series. And that's what I've been doing for a while.
I think that's interesting. And I wonder, because I think sometimes also people are like, well, I like the Chase series, and they don't bother to read the other ones. And you may see a little more of that. Your Noir series is obviously longer, but I mean, do you think you have several of the same readers? Do you think you have different readers for both series?
Yeah. I think Nora, and that was part of the reason that Nora hit more down the center of a genre, or closer to, as close as I seem to manage to get to tropes and what have you. And with 7 books, the 7th one just about to come out next month, The Nora series is doing more in sales than the AJ series that has 16 books. But Spitfire Storm and the AJ series that recently released, it did the best that any AJ book has done, and actually did really well. So I think there's benefits to everything. What I'm not considering doing is stopping either one. I'm actually looking at a third series, which is with 3. When you're trying to do 4 books a year, 3 series is actually a complicated math. But I don't plan on stopping either of the other series. All right, let's get to our guest. So Franklin Horton, as I mentioned, we just recently met him in person at BoucherCon. You'd met him before. He's a great guy. He has 5 series he writes thrillers and post-apocalyptic thrillers, and he slays it in that genre. And we're going to talk to him about testing the waters because he's used quite a few diversified ways of selling his books. Let's meet him. Franklin, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here with you guys.
We can't get enough of you. We just saw you at BoucherCon, and then you're following us to NINC, which is a little stalkery, I must say.
I think he's leaving before we are, so we're following him to NINC. So
I'm going there to warm things up, and get the party started so you guys can just slip right in.
Make sure they got all the liquor at the tiki bar that we need.
And sample.
I am not trusting him to make sure there's still liquor at the tiki bar. He'll wipe out the tiki bar before we get there.
For a lot of our listeners, NINC is an author conference that we go to in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is right on the beach, and there's a little tiki bar. And it's a great opportunity to kind of hang out with other authors and get to know some things in the industry. And we always have a really good time talking at the tiki bar most of the time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started writing and publishing first, and let's kind of get that.
I was one of those kids who grew up in the 70s when Stephen King was exploding. And the cool thing about that was so many authors up until that point, at least from my standpoint, were these guys with leather elbow patches who were talking about their great works of literary fiction,
I just pictured that jacket. That's perfect.
Oh, yeah. And then you had Stephen King burst onto the scene, who was like the AC/DC of authors. Here's a beer-drinking, coke-snorting, larger-than-life personality who was writing genre fiction and just made it seem cool. And, I'd always enjoyed telling stories, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. So not long after that, I got a Royal typewriter, and I started writing 3 pages a day, every day. And I would just write down, it wasn't exactly a journal, but it was more like a collection of little vignettes of things that I remembered or people that I knew or weird place names or stuff like that. And basically that was just collecting this big wealth of information that I thought one day I might be able to use in books. So I went to college as an English major, which was no help whatsoever.
Nope. Not one bit. Nope.
It got me a job one time, which was at a 1-hour photo, which kind of dates me because the general manager also had an English degree and he felt sorry for me. So that was the only time it ever got me a job.
I was wondering how you were going to tie an English degree to a 1-hour photo.
Yeah, it was a pity hire. So I did that, got out of school with my English degree and started writing, finished my first novel probably in 90 and thought, the world was going to be the path to my door. And sadly, they did not. So I started submitting and I kept writing. And probably from about 1990 to 2010, I wrote 7 novels. Sent them off, amassed probably 600 or 700 rejections during that time. Never got an agent, never sold anything, but like a lot of writers, kept beating my head against the wall. And then in 2011, when Kindle started to become a thing, I started testing the waters with some of my early stuff and saw, this is not what people are reading. This is not for the Kindle audience. So I started writing some new stuff for Kindle, and my first Kindle book came out in 2015, did really well, changed my life. And so a few years later, I was able to quit my job and just do that. And I've been writing full time now for 5 years and have 34 books out on Amazon and several more in the can waiting to go. So this has become my thing.
What were you writing originally? What was kind of the genre and vibe you were writing?
Well, I mentioned that English major thing, and they only have one genre, which is literary fiction. So that's what everybody pushed, and that was the only thing they would read. If you wanted to write science fiction or horror or anything like that, they would conduct weekend workshops that you could sign up for. And it's like they didn't want to do it during mainstream school hours. It was like this under cover of darkness thing that you had to go in for on the weekend, and learn how to write thriller and horror and science fiction. But, so that's what I did. Mindset was that literary fiction was where it is. And I still like reading literary fiction, but writing it is not made for me.
What made your decision to write the genre, the thrillers and the post-apoc you're writing now?
Well, I enjoyed reading those since the 70s, reading the early science fiction that was apocalyptic. And then as it became more popular, I was reading some of the later post-apocalyptic writers. And I was listening to a podcast where they were interviewing an author named Joe Nobody. He was an early post-apocalyptic author of the later generation of post-apocalyptic authors. And he was talking about the genre being so hungry that they were being hounded by readers and desperately wanted more authors to write in that genre because readers were just, bombarding them. So that was my calling. I knew right then. So that's what I started writing. And my first book, The Borrowed World, ended up hitting number one in that genre, which to me was like that's an indicator. That's a sign from the gods. That is lightning striking. That means this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I stuck with that. And now I have 4 series that are ongoing in that same world. And that has been worked really well for me.
That's awesome. So, you've obviously been in the business for a while. Being, full-time now for 5 years, publishing almost, 9 years, and writing since, I don't know, Nick was like just a little baby.
Writing since we used typewriters. That dates you right there.
That's right. So how does your approach to selling books, how's that evolved and changed since you really started publishing?
2015 was the golden years of Kindle, right? Those early years. And it must have changed so much in your eyes.
Yeah, that was a very explosive time because you could put things out and there was a market just waiting for them. And it was like the marketing was all organic and there was very little required on your part. I didn't do any ads the first year. It was just, I didn't do any interviews the first year. It was all just throwing a book out there. And then Amazon's recommendation engine would show it to other people. And the rest just happened. And then I did audio, which is huge in this genre. There's a lot of listeners, and audio has always been very big for post-apocalyptic. So it was only after a couple of years that I realized if I want to kind of level up and take this from being a hobby to potentially a job, that I needed to get more visibility. So that's when I started the marketing efforts.
So what are some like the different arenas that you've actually tried to sell some of your books like that? Like what some different techniques you've used?
Well, what's different about post-apocalyptic is because there is such a survival theme in the books that there is a lot of real-world crossover. There are events like these preparedness and survival shows where the people that attend those shows read your books. So early on, as my books started getting read more, I got invited to appear at these events. And that was amazing because there are people at those events doing podcasts and doing interviews. So that increases your visibility. There are people coming through that have never seen your books before, but they enjoy reading. So you sell a lot of books at those. And then it gives an opportunity for your existing readers to have a place they can go and get a signed book. So I've focused early on the tie-ins to the real-world survival community, and I started appearing on some of those podcasts that were about preparedness, survival, doom and gloom, end of the world stuff. Then I started, and I've tried everything. I've tried every method of throwing money away to get people to write your books, read your books. I've tried advertising on late night radio because I had such a big audience of truckers that I'm like, these truckers are up late at night. They're listening to the radio as they're driving around. So I would go to local radio stations along the interstate and I would get cheap ads, because if you go to the big, like iHeartRadio, you have to get a huge advertising package. But if you go to a local radio station, they will produce the ad for you. They end up just costing a few bucks a spot, and that ends up being the way to go. So I learned quickly to stay out of the national advertising radio networks and just go to local stations. But that still did not seem, there was not a measurable result from that.
I was gonna ask, could you find an ROI on that at all? So yeah.
At one point too, I had a guy who wrote for a national gun magazine did a story about my books, and I saw a bump from that. So I got the genius idea that I was going to take out advertisements, full page advertisements in national magazines, and these were expensive. That was like $5,000 a month at that time to take out those packages, and that produced nothing except, having a nice little ad that you could cut out and stick on your wall. So that was another one of those learning experiences.
Do the cancel check too and just drop it up there too.
Exactly. And it became a good story to tell, but that's about it.
I'm interested a little bit because, Nick, you just did the dive show too, right? The scuba diving show.
I did, yeah.
And so I've thought the same thing, like with boat show, for our genre being more tropical and diving and stuff, that boat shows and dive shows might be a good opportunity to do something like that. So I find that an interesting avenue that you went with. So.
I did some stuff with a scuba magazine too. It was their digital rather than in the magazine themselves. I actually wanted to do an ad in the magazine, and they go, no, we'll do it, on our Facebook feed. You'll get far better.
Stupid.
You don't want to do that. You do it on our Facebook feed and ads through there. And I did it when I only had one book out originally. I thought, this would be a good idea. And I dropped $500 on it, which when I had one book out, and I was still working full time, so I could handle the $500. But in terms of book sales, I couldn't handle $500. They sold nothing. So I tried it again because I'm stupid. Earlier, like at the beginning of this year, because I thought, well, now look, I got 15 books in this series. It's going to hit now because all they're going to do is get a couple of buyers and they're going to buy through. Yeah, same result.
I think real life events for certain genres are a good crossover, because when my readers come to an event like that, they feel that they're getting things other than just my books. It's not like inviting them to a standalone signing where that's all they get is they get to see me and get a book. They come to these events. There are also classes they can take and other vendors they can buy from and other authors they can learn about. So it becomes a good value for them. But I still do these shows, and I did one back in March, and I sold out of most of the books I took, and I think I took about 400 or 500 books with me. And you're not going to be able to make your living just entirely on doing that, but it becomes a big thing for readers. And, I've always been about readers becoming ambassadors for you. And when they come to an event like that and they get a picture taken or, whatever they want you to do, they post that on social media. That spreads words about your book. And there's always a bump from those. There's always some kind of little rise in sales after that attributes back to that event.
That's a good number of books to move. That's I did the scuba show, and I sold some books. I think I sold just under 100. I think it was 70 or 80. But the problem was the price of the booth was too high. So it was almost impossible to make the money back. In fact, I didn't have enough books and merchandise there to make the money back because I was so scared of ending up with a bunch of stuff. I kind of knew it was going to be a loss leader. But again, with a long series, the hope is the people that bought those books are going to go away and buy the rest of them. And so down the road. But obviously you found, if you're selling 400 or 500 books, it opens up the price of the booth a little bit more. But
what I strive for is to attend events where there's no price of the booth, because I either work out a marketing relationship with the sponsor of the show where I'm going to promote it to my readers in exchange for the booth. And then some of these events I've attended, if you agree to do a class or a speaking event while you're there, they comp you for the cost of the booth. So I try not to go to events where I have to pay anything for the booth.
So let me recap. So the key is to get the booth for free and then sell 500 books. And then you make money. I'm making a note of this, Franklin, because I have not achieved this.
I'm not saying that it's a strategy that's easy to duplicate, but it's kind of become how it works for me, and I'm just going to roll with it.
I think that also kind of falls back to something that we have said oftentimes is that, again, like we just said earlier in the intro, your mileage may vary on everybody. And so obviously there are certain genres, post-apocalyptic, survivalist kind of thing, maybe a little bit different than if you were writing, I don't know, say Western romance. You know, you're not going to get quite the same bang for your buck every time. So I think you got to compare that to some extent too.
But I think the key to that, which Franklin, you nail, is know your audience. And you're killing it in that genre because you live in amongst a lot of that world, right? I mean, if I run out of canned beans, you're the guy to come and see in your basement. So I think identifying that audience and really serving to it is a big key.
Yeah, and that's where events come in handy, because when you communicate with your readers on social media and through, your contact form on your website, you're only getting a slice of what they're about. But when you attend an event where you sit there and kind of BS and converse with your readers, you learn a lot more about them. You know, you see how they're dressed, and you see the things they talk about, and you see where they spend money, and you get a much more complete picture that even helps you target your advertising later, because it's not just the spoken, but the unspoken things you pick up about your readers like that. And communicating with my readers has always been a big thing for me. I mean, that's probably an hour or two out of each day is the emails, the messages, the correspondence with readers, because that's become part of it, like the writing each day.
What do you find the age group is of your readers?
It skews older. You know, you would think that post-apocalyptic, because of all the survival and the gear and all that, would be mostly male, but it tends to be pretty evenly split, about 50-50, but it is generally 60 and over.
So many genres are that way.
Yeah, and I target my ads that way, and I've targeted male and female individually to see what happened with it, and it pretty much splits down the middle. But keeping my ads at 60 and over cuts down on how many troll comments I have to delete every day.
Do you keep when you're running, you talk about Facebook ads, I'm sure here with the age group, so you do that 60 and over, and then I end up finding myself, I'm like, I'm just gonna test the waters down here, and I do 45 and up. And then look at the stuff after like 3 weeks. I'm like, why did I do that again?
I mean, I wonder if that's just that's when people are reading now. They're getting older and they're reading. People who are younger aren't as much. I mean, I still read a lot, but I don't know. But then I'm not younger anymore, so I guess that may be it. So
I attribute a lot of my younger readers to the audiobook market, because audiobooks are huge for me. I mean, many months my audiobook royalties are higher than anything else. They're higher than everything else combined.
That's amazing. I've never heard of that.
In post-apocalyptic, we have a large audience of truck drivers. We've got factory workers. We've got people who are doing repetitive jobs where they can listen all day long. And truck drivers are a huge audience because they may go through an audiobook a day, the heavy readers. So I think that most of the younger readers I'm picking up are through audio.
So I've a twofold question. Like, I want to talk to you a little bit more about ads, like what you find as far as how in Main Street ads, what you're finding, whether Facebook or Amazon is more effective. But I also kind of want to touch on, how are you advertising? Are you advertising audio, or are you just relying on the recommendations that go with it? Because audio is often a hard thing to advertise. Because with Amazon, at least you know you're advertising a book. They're looking for a book, but audio often difficult because then they got to think about it when they're going back to get the book later.
Well, you can't advertise on Audible either, right? So
the audio that I advertise, I primarily focus on the box sets. I advertise them on Facebook, and I emphasize that, you're getting 35 hours of listening for one credit. That kind of ends up being the headline of the ad. And I focus that toward people who, Audible is one of the interests that you select when you're targeting the ad. But I do advertise audio that way. I do a lot of Amazon. I do a lot of Facebook advertising. But for me, the key is trying to find some little aspect of advertising that other people aren't using. Because if you're throwing out the same ad, the same Kindle ad that everybody else is throwing out, and it's going into that big morass of ads, it's hard to excel. For me right now, the thing that's performing highest is video ads. So I have focused on having fewer ads, but spending more time building them and trying to build, little 25-second videos that are demonstrating what the book is about, and they're eye-catching, and using those on Amazon and Facebook both have kept my click costs very low. And those are the ones that are getting the responses now. They're getting hundreds of thousands of views, whereas my others may be getting tens of thousands of views.
I've heard the videos are doing really well.
Well, they catch your eye. The movement on the page catches your eye, and it's people's instinct to see, what it's about, what's going to happen.
So what you're saying is that Nick may be wearing a Speedo on the beach with his scuba gear might be a good ad for him to do on Facebook. Is that what I'm hearing?
Not if it makes people accelerate their scroll and go further down the page, You want something that's going to make them stop, not speed up.
That's why I don't let you run my ads, Doug.
Hey, shouldn't be the only reason my ads do not do as well as they should. And so also I'm also curious because you do a lot of merch too, right? You have this is something Nick does as well, but you have a huge merch store.
It's interesting that you create characters sometimes that people just want more of. They want more than the book gives them. It becomes like a lifestyle to them beyond the book. So what I've tried to do is take this whole mindset of the book, the whole world of the character, and create it into a brand that people can then take on with them in their regular life, because a lot of them want reminders throughout the day of that book experience. Because one of the things I've found is that people aren't reading the books one time. Some of them are playing these books over and over again. You're getting 8 reads, 10 reads, 12 reads, whatever. And that to me shows that people want to be immersed in this world more than just the one reading experience. So I try to offer, shirts and hats and mugs and all that stuff, and just things that they can have with them throughout the day that kind of remind them of that world of the books. And I take suggestions from them too. People throw out quotes from the books that are important to them or meaningful to them, or they say, I'd really like it if you did one about this, and I'll throw that design together because I do the designs myself, and I will upload them, and I'll shoot them a message and say, hey, I uploaded that mug you were looking for. They buy it and they share it to social media. Then that becomes another ad channel.
And an example of that would be Coffee Makes Me Poop.
Yeah, exactly.
You might want to clarify that for everybody, Nick, because
I was looking through his merch store and he's got a mug that says Coffee Makes Me Poop.
It's a really random thing to throw out there, like, hey.
Okay, so one of my more popular series is the Mad Mick. And when I started that, he has a mug that was a gift from his daughter. So I just Googled stupid mugs, and I started scrolling through looking for mugs, and I saw one that said Coffee Makes Me Poop, and that became his mug, and that became a character of its own in the book, and it kind of recurs at different times. So, and as an experiment, I've made patches, mugs, shirts, hoodies, all this with that design, and it is my biggest seller. If I go to an event and I have Coffee Makes Me Poop stickers or Coffee Makes Me Poop patches, they sell like crazy.
So for people out there who are like, hey, I've got a similar kind of a series that might have a good merch abilities, where are you having them produced? Like, I mean, are you making this you're not making all of this at home or anything like that. So I'm assuming you're going to have it. Are you having to buy it like by the truckload, or do you have a print on demand kind of a?
Yeah, it's a print on demand kind of thing. I started looking years ago, and Shopify seems to be, a lot of people don't like Shopify because it's more complicated and more expensive, but it's the most versatile platform out there. And if you master Shopify, it's easy to then add things like your direct sales books, your direct sales audio, which I'm not doing at this point, but, I've experimented with it at times, but it becomes easy to integrate all those things. So then I have a couple of print-on-demand suppliers, like Printful is one company I use, Gelato is another. I upload my designs, I put them on the different products that I want to sell, I integrate those with my store, and when people buy them, the print-on-demand companies ship them, so I never handle that merchandise. There are a couple of things that I fulfill myself that I either make or have made locally, and those things, like I said, I upload them, I take the pictures, I sell them directly, and that's more just because I enjoy doing a few of those things myself.
Yeah, I use Printful for my my stuff too. I use Printify for a couple of things, but I like Printful, and my website's on Wix, and Printful will integrate with Wix in there. You can build a store in Wix, and it'll talk to it directly. So it's like you said, it's hands off. Once you set it up, it takes time to set it all up and get it rolling. But after that, you don't touch it; it just gets shipped to the purchaser.
Yeah, and that money goes on. I kind of keep that money separate, and it goes on to pay for like my web hosting fees and my MailerLite subscription and all those things. So it's worthwhile to create and have that source of income, even if it's not huge, because it pays for other little things that it makes me feel like I'm getting some value for the time I spend on those designs.
So I have a quick question. It's kind of a fun one, really. So if you have fans who are buying Coffee Makes Me Poop stickers or Mad Mick stickers, I mean, have you ever had one show up with a really cool tattoo of something from your book? Because I'm waiting for that to happen for me, and my wife won't even do it. So
I've had people ask about it. So far as I know, I may be the only person with Mad Mick tattoos because I have them. But I do have them pop up in unusual places. I may have told you about this at VoucherCon, but just recently there was a famous professional wrestler, a female wrestler named Eva Marie, who became obsessed with my books. And so she has 6 million followers on Instagram. And for 2 weeks, she was posting reels and stories about these books and how obsessed she was. So I sent her some Mad Mick merch. So she goes out running in this weighted vest every day, and she had Mad Mick patches on her weighted vest, and that's the kind of organic advertising that you dream of.
I just Googled Ava Marie. Yes?
Yes, what? You didn't believe him, or yes, she's...
No, I think she'd be good for advertising.
Oh, yeah.
She actually
better than you in a Speedo is what I'm hearing. Is that
Hell
right?
Yes.
She has little action figures, too. I mean, she's been around, so she's a superstar in this world. So And she very much related to one of the characters in one of my books, and that became the point where she bonded. There's a character, Barb, in the Mad Mick, who trains obsessively, and that's who she related to. And she tells me, she says, I'm living my Barb life.
So you need to get a action figure that was her as Barb and just send that out. Maybe you could do a cross promo thing.
I'm kind of harboring this little idea in the back of my head that she could play Barb in the movie.
Oh, there we go. There you go.
Yeah, so we're going to discuss that.
Get her on a licensing plan. I have to tell you, I do have a reader that has a tattoo from one of my books. So the Mermaid Divers logo, which is my AJ Bailey's dive company, and I made up a logo for it with a mermaid and a dive helmet and stuff like that. This guy got the tattoo.
That's pretty awesome. That's cool. Well, you have don't they have a boat? Is it in Key Largo that's got their boat design, or is it in Cayman?
Yeah, Islamorada, Conch Republic Divers. They wrapped it, and it's called the Mermaid Diver. And so they're friends of mine at Conch Republic, and they said, hey, can we use kind of some graphics from your logo and stuff to do it? I'm like, yeah.
Please.
Please, exactly.
Put a QR code on that thing. So
yeah,
you take
like
a picture of it, and it goes right straight to
send the artwork. Yeah, so it's pretty amazing. Cool. All right. Well, this is mega. Let's, we're going to run out of time here. We could chat all day. How about a question we ask everyone, Franklin, is what do you feel your author superpower is? Whether that's on the creative or marketing side, what do you think is your cape-wearing power?
I really think it's in personal reader engagement, because I make that, like I was mentioning earlier, it's kind of a big part of my day that, I feel like if I can ask somebody to pay a certain amount of money for my book and to take the time out of their life to read my book, then I should be able to read their messages. So I try to read and respond to every message when I can. And there's a lot. I mean, it's like I said, a 2-hour thing every day that I'm sitting there replying to Facebook comments, replying to personal messages. But, the way I look at that, those people then become invested in our relationship, and they become ambassadors for my brand and my books. And, even like the little things, like if it's their birthday and you notice it and you wish them a happy birthday, that goes a long way.
I really thought you were going to answer that with your superpower was staying regular.
Yeah. Coffee.
Coffee was
Coffee
the
makes
key.
me poop. Yep, that's the key. Before we go, we have one more question for you, and if you've listened at all,
I have. I'm one of your. How many listeners do you
we
have?
4 total.
Yeah.
I think Cheryl listens to us, but Ashley doesn't. So we count her and you, and we need to throw some music in for this. I think that'd be kind of cool, like a real big. Dun, 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 dun.
I think we're overplaying it already. Will you spin the damn thing?
I told you I'm running low on sleep. So if you were to take the income and business aside, how often do you think you would just write? If you hit that $800 million Mega Millions the other day, would you still want to write for enjoyment?
I continued doing it when I was getting rejections and when nobody was reading it, because I think when you're born into this, when a writer is who you are, it becomes something you have to do to process the world. And, that's something we saw at the BoucherCon conference that we were at. There are people there in their 70s and 80s who are writing their first book, and it's something they've dreamed of their whole life, and it's who they are and what they identify with. Yeah, so I think I would do it. I might not write as many, but I would still do it.
If I had that $700 million, then I have nothing else really to do but, sit on my boat and, write in the rain. So.
Well, 2 a year might be better, because 1 a year I would probably spend too much time in the Keys testing the bars. So,
yeah.
Go, you can write in the bars, so that's the beautiful part.
Yeah, don't tell me that. I haven't tried that. I'll have to try it.
Don't go with somebody who's going to be like giving you shots. I mean, that may be a challenge.
So don't write with Nick, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll discuss this more in the Tiki Bar and next week.
I appreciate you guys. Enjoyed talking to you.
Franklin's so cool, man.
He's great, man. And man, he's really got tuned into his audience too. So that's pretty.
Doesn't he? He knows who he's, and he's been doing it a while, right? So this isn't something you come up with. And actually, quite honestly, if you're just starting out and you scan who your audience are, you don't have enough data points. It'll be skewed. When you've been selling as many books as he has for as long, you can really start narrowing that down. And he does a super job with it.
I think also he says he uses Facebook ads and Amazon. I think if you're starting out as an author, you need to be using those before you start jumping to billboards and radio ads and stuff like that. And honestly, I like that he's using these shows to pinpoint what his audience is, who his audience is, his demographic, what they like, and he can then use that to target them in Facebook. So I think that anything you do outside of for marketing your books needs to involve either Facebook or Amazon, but probably both. And then also you can start adding on the other things. So don't be, you're going to need to know where your demographic is driving. Like he knows truck drivers, so he could probably get away with billboards because he knows that now, but he didn't know that in 2015. Yeah,
exactly. Then start dipping a toe, right, and see if you're reaching them through these different mediums. But I think the one thing we've learned with the guests we've had on, especially over the last few weeks and few months, is, man, there's a lot of avenues out there to be in touch with your audience. So don't be shy to get on out there. So
what have you been up to, sir?
I have been writing. I'm trying to get Festive Summer finished. I should have it finished, fingers crossed, through the weekend and get it to Andrew, my editor, on Monday. It's come out really, really fun. So that's been good. I've had this bronchitis frickin' thing that's driving me bananas and not letting me sleep. So I'm writing at 3 a.m.
Fine. And you have a dive coming up, right?
Yeah, got the dive event coming up in 2 weeks down in Isla Morada with Conch Republic Divers. Got a group of readers who are also divers coming down.
You got any room on there for anybody else?
Well, if you came down, buddy, we'd sneak your wife in.
Sneak my wife in, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, but what about, next year then maybe for some.
Yeah. Keep an eye on the social. We're gonna be banging out some social stuff from the event. And
I'm gonna get down there one day. This one's right after Nink, so it's gonna be a little tough, but yeah.
And you've been hanging out with Francine.
I've been, yes. My week kind of got screwed up. I was planning on doing some writing before we went off to Nink together, and instead Francine took a jog north, and while she didn't hit us directly where I'm over in Gulfport, that was pretty close. We got a lot of the weather, not the eye, and not what they got in Louisiana, which, God bless those people who are underwater now. It was pretty bad. We mostly got a lot of the water and the surge, and so my son and I came down.
Those videos you posted with the water all the way over the dock that you're tied to is sketch.
Yeah, 4:00 this morning, we were trying to we couldn't get off the boat. We were trying to just adjust the lines. So yeah, if you follow me on Facebook, you can see some of the videos I posted. I try to they're not as dramatic as the ones in Louisiana, but it was, I want to kind of give everybody an idea. Plus my wife is at home. She's been worried, so I want to keep her up to date. So.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening in. We really appreciate it. Check out the show notes for links to our guest info, as well as our books, their books, our social media, and all that good stuff. And until next time, be cool to each other.
Fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favorite platform for alerts on new shows coming every 2 weeks.